Good morning. This is Hammersmith Chess Club, Junior Hour Basics in 5 or 10 or 15 minutes. This video is a summary of a session we had in April 2020 on openings, the basics of openings or the principles of openings. What are these principles? There are three: control the center, develop your pieces, castle your king. And in this session, we will again and again repeat those three principles. To explain that, I start with an idealistic game where black does not move and only white moves. White does an opening exactly according to those three principles. It starts with the principle 1, control the center. This is done by one of the central pawns, e4 or d4, or indeed, if the opponent allows, with both pawns. Second principle, develop your pieces. Very often it starts with a knight and then the bishops follow. Here the bishop follows, the knight follows because the pawn is attacked. Then bishop 1 is developed. Castle your king, the third principle. So it not always comes after all pieces have been developed, but could come in between. Indeed, very often the king side is developed first, and then the king is castled, and then the queen side pieces are developed. Now, all pieces of white have been developed, and the king is castled. The opening is over. The next moves could be a development of the queen, and sometimes it is said that the fourth principle of the openings is to connect the rooks, but I think this is more a middle game principle, and there can be other principles to develop the rook in a different way. And even sometimes it is said, yes, the rooks have to go to open files or to go behind pushed pawns. So that could be an idealistic setup after 10 moves, the completion of an ideal opening. Now, of course, in a serious game, the opponent will not allow that to happen. And I will come to that. Before we see some typical openings, real openings with opponents moving, I want to show three very typical mistakes which beginners do. Mistake 1 is that you move your pieces twice or even more in the opening. Instead of completing the development of all pieces, they move a lot of times with one piece only. While the first knight move to f6 was still okay, the second is not, because here the knight will be pushed around. Now white has 2 pawns already in the center, a very strong center. It's in complete control of the center. Now even the first piece of white is developed, and black still jumps around with the bishop. So after 6 moves, with the knight, after 6 moves, the knight has moved 6 times. Incredible. So now the second piece of white is developed, and black already has to move the pawn to f5 to defend the knight. But after f3, indeed, the knight has no more squares available to go to. So the first mistake, basic mistake, is to move your one piece 2 times or even 3 times in the opening. The second major mistake done by beginners in the opening is to very early move the queen. Now white sees, that can be made with queen f7. Of course, the opponent sees this as well, and queens can be easily pushed away with the loss of a tempo. Now another threat, still queen f7, a different way. But black easily refutes this threat even by developing one of the pieces. Okay, white sees it can push the pawn and will push the knight away and then there might be mate on f7. However, black can push the queen back to its original spot. So at the moment, the queen is where it started, just one piece developed by white and 3 pieces developed by black, and black already is winning, is attacking the queen. That can be protected, but there is check, knight f3, and there is mate, bishop h3. So just to mention one third major mistake, which is very often done by beginners in the opening, that is to move your piece to squares where they hinder other pieces' development. They block the own position. In this case, not only the bishop, so before development of this bishop, the knight move to d2 is not good usually, but it also prevents the queen from going anywhere. And this even after the queen's pawn has been pushed in the first move. Black is able to attack. And after this mistake, black is even able to win the queen. The queen can't go away. And if the knight is taken, then it will be even worse because white is mated. So after having seen first the idealistic setup or the idealistic development of the pieces in the opening, after having seen 3 typical mistakes, now we want to see how a normal opening could work. So I show one possible system which white could develop, kind of standard moves which works against most of the opponent's plans. Principle number 1, control the center, done by a central pawn. Now, one possible move of black could be c6, Caro-Kann. In that case, white is even able to put 2 pawns on the center. Black can block this, white can exchange. So this is a stable center. There is no threat coming from this center for white. White can now go on developing the pieces. That's the principle number 2. First the knight, then the bishop, then castling. So the king is in safety already after 6 moves. Second bishop is developed and second knight is developed. Now here we see the development to the knight to d2 after the bishop has come out. So after 8 moves, the opening is over and the middle game can start. An alternative in the second move for black would be e6, French opening or French defense. Again here, white can occupy the center. Black, of course, does the same. It's similar idea to just exchange, which allows white to follow the original, the typical plan, develop the pieces, starting with the knight, continuing with the bishop, continuing with short castling. Second knight is developed, second bishop is developed, and the opening is finished. Similar works as well against the first move, d6, the perk defense. Here it is the queen's knight which is first developed because the pawn e4 is attacked, but the king's knight is following. Then the first bishop development. Now again, short castling. And second bishop is developed, not to f4 or g4, as in having seen in the previous openings. In this case, for example, to e3, and the opening is over. Middle game starts. Now, the most common move of black, the first move is e5, because black has similar ideas to occupy the center, to control the center. Also here we follow, we develop a piece, at the same time attacking an opponent's piece or pawn. So black has to already defend, doesn't have complete freedom what to do. White develops the first bishop, the king's bishop. C4 is one possibility. Okay, black does the same, short castling. After 4 moves already, white has castled. Now, we do not always have to first develop the knight and then push the d-pawn in order to develop the bishop. It could be done the other way around. First the d-pawn, because that allows the bishop to come out the next move. Knight, bishop. 7 moves already, opening finished. Now, in the third move, white does not have to move the bishop to c4. It could be done to b5. c4 was Italian opening. b5 is Spanish opening. Similar ideas, d3, short castling, knight, and final bishop. Opening over. So if black does not move e5 in the first move, it could control the center already with c5. e4 is theoretically possible, but it could be taken and then it's more open and it's a very different setup. c5, Sicilian, very typical first knight development, like also with Spanish or Italian. And while it is very common to push the pawn d4, so why not just develop the piece, as we have seen in Spanish. So it's very similar to Spanish, only in Spanish, black's pawn is on e5 and not on c5. And the same follow-up by white. e4 is protected by knight c3, short castling, d3 in order to develop the piece, the last piece. The opening is over and already now white attacks a piece of black, which is always nice. Now, e4 was one alternative in the beginning if you like d4 better, or in order to have a second opening repertoire, why not playing d4? And just look at that setup. e4, e5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop c4, Italian. Now just imagine, here would be a mirror in the middle of the board from the line between d and e1 and d and e8. And all the pieces which are here on this side are mirrored to the other side, and all the pieces on that side are mirrored to that side. And that's possible with d4. So knight c3, where the second move after e4 was knight f3, and bishop f4 instead of bishop c4. This is just a mirroring position of the Italian opening. Very viable to play. It is rarely played indeed, very rarely played, but it is completely possible. It's at least equal, if not better, for white. Now, it could follow, for example, black opens the diagonal for the king's bishop. White does the same. Both sides develop pieces. Now, instead of castling, maybe here, white moves the queen already to the second rank. And after one more move, black has finished the development. White has the choice also to castle long. This is something different. White could castle short, but could as well castle long, and that's not too bad in this position. So this is a possible repertoire of openings with d4, following the principle, control the center, develop your pieces, castle your king. Now, looking at black, the same principles apply. Of course, why not? And we have seen this already in some openings. So if white does e4, you might just do the same e5, you control the center. It does not mean you dominate the center, but you have it under control. Nothing much can happen in the center. Very typical knight f3. Okay, you develop one piece, you defend your pawn e5. Now, Italian opening, you develop the king's bishop, then the king's knight. You castle short, you prepare your second bishop to develop, and that is done. And after 7 moves, your opening is finished. Now, we have seen the second move of knight f3. Very often in club games or at beginner's level, white moves, second move, pawn to f4, king's gambit, very aggressive. I would recommend not to take the pawn here, which is possible, but that's a very different play, and white will have the initiative and will develop his pieces before you can do that. So my suggestion is, as we had seen in all the previous openings, follow the principle, control the center, which could mean here just defending your pawn e5 by d6. And if white develops the piece, the knight to f3, just support e5 a second time with knight c6. And when white develops the bishop, you do the same, bishop e7, castling, knight f6, and you castle yourself. And now even you have finished your opening before white has done. And I think already black is better in this position. White could, of course, also develop with first d4. So we had seen d5, we had seen knight c3, knight f6, bishop f4. Okay, I would not move e6. You could also develop your queenside bishop first to bring it out of your pawn chain. e3, e6, knight f3, bishop e7, bishop e2, short castling, and knight c6. All your pieces are out, your king is castled, opening finished. And complete balance, so I think playable. After the first moves, however, mostly white players will play queen's gambit, similar as the king's gambit, which we had seen mirrored on the other side. Now white very often or mostly plays queen's gambit. Also here my recommendation, don't take on c4 because it gives white a lot of initiative and attack potential and development potential. Just control the center with e6, support or control the center again, knight f6, and then develop the remaining pieces, bishop e7, short castling, so your king is safe. And now you can think of your queen side. In this case, you might even think to develop your bishop not to d7, as we have seen so far, to the center, but to the edge, or to b7. So that would be the fianchettoing of your bishop. That's always a possibility, to go with your bishop the other side. And maybe in this case, wait with the final completion of the opening with a knight move, because the knight to c6 would block the pawn. Here you might well first push the pawn to c5 and then move knight c6. And now your opening is finished and the middle game can start. So you have seen a lot of openings, the first 10 moves. You have seen an idealistic setup. You have seen a few mistakes, which typically are done by beginners. And if you don't do it, your opponent might do those mistakes, and you can exploit those mistakes. Always thinking of the own principles. Control the center, develop your pieces, and castle your king. You have seen possible opening repertoires for white and for black. Now the games that we have seen here, the first 10 moves or so, you will very rarely have those games or those moves in your real games. Your opponents will vary their moves. They will differ. And there are so many thousands and hundreds of thousands of possibilities, well, billions of possibilities in the first few moves. Don't worry that it will be boring. And once you know the typical setup, then If opponents deviate in one move from the normal setup, you might find what the best way is then to counter that move of your opponent. And with this, at least, you don't need to learn all the moves or the moves orders. It's important to remember the principles, not the moves, but the principles. And the principles are control the center, develop your pieces, and castle your king. And once this is done, as some people say, you can start playing chess. Good luck with that.